The slopes of Mount Carmel are known not only for their stark beauty, but for the deep secrets they hold beneath the soil. Among the most important paleoanthropological discoveries of the 20th century were those made at Skhul Cave, situated just south of Haifa. Excavations in the late 1920s and early 1930s revealed a complex assemblage of early human fossils, including 7 adults and 3 children. The most enigmatic among these is the child designated Skhul I, a 140,000-year-old skeleton of a 3 to 5-year-old child, whose unusual features have confounded and fascinated scientists for nearly a century. In recent years, technological advances, particularly high-resolution scanning, have allowed researchers to revisit and reassess these fossils with fresh eyes and greater precision. The result has been a paradigm-shifting hypothesis, that the Skhul I child may not have been a typical Homo sapiens, but a hybrid, born of a Homo sapiens and a Homo neanderthalensis parent. This possibility not only redefines the story of human evolution in the Levant, but also suggests cultural and biological exchanges between lineages far earlier than previously believed. When Theodore McCown and Dorothy Garrod unearthed the Skhul I child in 1931, the scientific community lacked the tools to resolve many of the questions posed by its unusual features. The remains, while remarkably complete, included a mandible that appeared inconsistent with anatomically modern humans. This jawbone was separated from the skeleton during excavation and later reconstructed with plaster, a process that, while helpful at the time, also obscured fine morphological details that are critical for modern taxonomic classification. Now, thanks to high-resolution scanning and comparative analysis with Neanderthal and Homo sapiens child skulls, researchers have been able to reconstruct and re-examine the Skhul I specimen. The neurocranium, though damaged, was scanned and compared to remains of Neanderthal children housed in the Musée de l'Homme in Paris. According to the analysis, the skull exhibits a striking combination. The parietal and temporal bones and the shape of the inner ear, bony labyrinth, resemble Homo sapiens, while the foramen magnum's receded and high posterior rim, and especially the mandible, bear a clear affinity with Neanderthals. The findings have reignited one of the oldest debates in paleoanthropology. Was the Skhul child a member of an intermediate species, a hybrid, or simply an early example of variability within Homo sapiens? According to the study, the evidence leans strongly toward the child being a hybrid, a direct product of interbreeding between a Neanderthal and a Homo sapiens. The mandible alone, with its robust shape and dental morphology, is remarkably Neanderthal in form. Yet the cranium, especially the parietals and temporal lobes, does not fit with known Neanderthal anatomy. John Hawkes of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, though not involved in the study, noted that this was the first serious reappraisal of the child since its original reconstruction. While Hawkes remains cautious about the hybrid hypothesis in the absence of genetic data, he acknowledges the value of this new approach, saying, "The old reconstruction and associated work, literally set in plaster, did not really enable anyone to compare this child with a broader array of recent children to understand its biology." Melassa herself admitted she was once skeptical that such hybridizations could result in viable offspring. However, the Skhul child, who lived to at least 5 years of age, proves such unions were not only possible, but may have played an important role in hominin evolution in the Levant. The Skhul cave site sits within the Nahal Me'orot Nature Reserve, part of the Mount Carmel range, just a few kilometers from the Mediterranean Sea. The cave was excavated as part of a project originally intended to mine limestone for a British harbour in Haifa. The endeavour became a landmark scientific expedition led by Dorothy Garrod and funded jointly by the British School of Archaeology in Jerusalem and the American School of Prehistoric Research. From 1929 to 1934, archaeologists uncovered not only the Skhul I child, but a total of at least 16 hominin individuals, including adults and children. The site's sediments were rich in stone tools and faunal remains, and evidence of deliberate burials made Skhul Cave one of the earliest known cemeteries in the world. The child was intentionally buried on her left side, suggesting early ritualistic behavior, Shell beads made from Nassarius shells, marine mollusks, were also found in association with the skeletons, suggesting symbolic or decorative use. These shells, significantly different from the local fauna, likely indicate that the Skhul people had a sense of aesthetics or ritual, and perhaps travelled long distances or traded to obtain such items. The initial classification of the Skhul remains was ambitious. In 1939, Arthur Keith and Theodore McCown named the species Paleoanthropus palestinensis, suggesting it was a transitional form between Homo heidelbergensis and modern Homo sapiens. Later researchers reinterpreted the remains as Proto-Cro-Magnons or as Neanderthal Homo sapiens hybrids. Keith and McCown themselves were hesitant to embrace the hybrid theory due to the lack of Neanderthal fossils in the same time period and region. In their 1939 monograph, Keith and McCown wrote that the Skhul neurocranium and teeth showed a mix of paleoanthropic and neanthropic features, concluding that the basal characters are paleoanthropic. The modern features seem to be grafted on this archaic foundation. In other words, while the cranial vault looked modern, it sat atop a base with clear, archaic, possibly Neanderthal-like morphology. The reinterpretation of the Skhul I child gains even more traction in light of the discovery of the Nesher Ramla Homo, a previously unknown archaic human population discovered nearby and dated to 140,000 to 120,000 years ago. These fossils, particularly the mandible and parietal bones, showed a curious mix of Neanderthal and archaic hominin features. According to the researchers, the Nesher Ramla hominin likely represents a surviving Middle Pleistocene population that contributed genetically to Neanderthals in Europe and perhaps Homo populations in East Asia. Crucially, the Nesher Ramla hominins shared their environment with early Homo sapiens and used Mousterian stone tools once thought to be exclusively Neanderthal. This suggests they had technological knowledge on par with other human species and possibly engaged in social or cultural interactions, including interbreeding, with Homo sapiens. The Skhul I child, found not far from Nesher Ramla and dating to the same time period, could very well be a product of such interactions. If one parent belonged to the Nesher Ramla population and the other to early Homo sapiens, this would explain the child's mixed cranial and mandibular features. It would also support the hypothesis that the Levant was not simply a passageway for human migration, but a melting pot where distinct lineages merged biologically and culturally. The burial of the Skhul I child raises profound questions. Was this practice initiated by Homo sapiens, by Neanderthals, or by both? And if the child was a hybrid, which group performed the burial? The researchers speculate that the earliest ritual behaviors might not belong to a single lineage. We do not know who buried this child, whether this place chosen to bury the corpse was that of a single community, or whether communities from different lineages, but which coexisted and established contacts or even unions, shared rites and emotions, the report said. This ambiguity opens the door to re-evaluating the origins of symbolic and ritual behavior. Until recently, Homo sapiens were credited with inventing symbolic culture, such as burials and ornamentation. But findings from sites like Shanidar Cave, a Neanderthal burial with pollen indicating flowers, and now Skhul and Nesher Ramla, suggest that these behaviors were shared, or at least imitated, across different species of humans. Despite the excitement surrounding the hybrid hypothesis, many researchers caution that without DNA analysis, any conclusions remain speculative. The Levantine caves are notoriously difficult environments for DNA preservation due to heat and humidity. Still, given that Neanderthal DNA has been extracted from far older remains in similar climates, there remains hope that a sample from the Skhul I child could be sequenced. Hawkes warns against overreaching. Human populations are variable, and there can be a lot of variability in their appearance and physical form, even without mixing with ancient groups like Neanderthals. Yet he acknowledges that the anatomical data now places Skhul I at the frontier of our understanding. The possibility that the Skhul I child was a Neanderthal Homo sapiens hybrid, or possibly even the offspring of a Nesha-Ramla human and an early Homo sapiens, carries enormous implications for human evolution. It suggests interbreeding occurred earlier and more widely than previously accepted. It also proposes that the Levant was a hub for these interactions, a central bus station, as Portuguese researcher Dani Coutinho Nogueira phrased it. More importantly, it demands that we reassess the rigidity of species boundaries. The discovery of the Denisovan Neanderthal hybrid girl, Deni, in Siberia already shattered many assumptions. If Skhul I was also a hybrid, and not an isolated case, then hybridization must be viewed not as an anomaly, but as a defining feature of human evolution. Furthermore, a Neanderthal child's tooth found in a cave called Skhul Cave, also by Dorothy Garrod, provides evidence that Neanderthals may have migrated further south than previously thought, possibly even into Africa. The tooth, along with Nubian-style stone tools found nearby, suggests Neanderthals inhabited the area and weren't just passing through. The discovery also challenges the idea that certain stone tool-making techniques, like the Nubian Levallois method, were exclusive to Homo sapiens. Examining the limits of the Neanderthal range is critical for determining these species' environmental tolerances, as well as investigating their ecological adaptability and behavioral flexibility. The discovery of a Neanderthal tooth marks a significant southward expansion of this population's range, which is associated with diverse technological practices, as evidenced by the presence of the Nubian Levallois reduction method, among other Levallois techniques. According to a statement issued by the Max Planck Institute of Geoanthropology, an international team of scientists has conducted a new analysis of a tooth and stone tools discovered in Skhul Cave, located in the Judean mountains. The researchers discovered a molar from a Neanderthal child aged about 9, making the cave the southernmost known Neanderthal site. Furthermore, stone tools classified as Nubian Levallois type have been linked to the Neanderthal tooth. Anthropologist Chris Stringer, a human evolution expert at the British Museum, wrote that, "We've long wondered if Neanderthals ever made their way to Africa. A Neanderthal tooth was found less than 200 miles from Africa, so this discovery strengthens the possibility that they did make it there." Secondly, he says, the stone tools discovered there were thought to be the work of modern humans. What's more, these findings lend support to long-held theories about Neanderthal occupations at sites even further south, such as Tor Faraj and Tor Sabiha near the Red Sea, only 100 miles from Africa. This finding challenges the traditional view of Neanderthals as confined to Europe and Western Asia, indicating climate-driven migration could have pushed them south, though arid conditions posed barriers. The story of the Skhul I child is the story of the Levant itself, of boundaries blurred, of evolution not as a tree, but as an intricate web of connections. This 5-year-old girl or boy buried deliberately in a cave overlooking the Mediterranean now speaks to us across 140,000 years with a message that echoes in our very DNA. We are not the product of one lineage, but of many. Her bones, fragile yet persistent, hold clues to an ancient mingling of minds, bodies, and cultures. As researchers continue to scan, compare, and analyze this remarkable fossil, one thing becomes clear. Skhul I is not merely a relic of the past, but a key to understanding the deeply entangled roots of our species. And with every scan and every theory, we move closer to answering not only what she was, but who we are. Of the various problems relating to extinct forms of man, none is of greater interest than that which concerns Homo neanderthalensis. This peculiar and extinct species of man appeared in Europe about the commencement of the Mousterian cultural period, and all traces of him vanished towards the close of that period. Where he came from, and where he finally disappeared, we do not know, hence every additional fact we can collect about him is of value, wrote Dr. Arthur Keith of the Royal College of London on the 25th of July, 1918. This statement still holds true over 100 years later. Thanks for watching and commenting, and please subscribe.